Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So on today's episode of the podcast, I have got, and I'm really pleased that these two have agreed to come on because we've been talking on and off for ages. I've got Peter Frost and Katy, Hampshire from Suffolk County Council. Thank you ever so much for joining me, both of you.
Hi Liz.
Hi. So, and we actually, amazingly enough, bumped into each other at Cenex. Is it about a couple of months ago now? On that very hot week that we had. I think we only had one hot week, didn't we, in 2023?
The entire summer.
So yeah, that was great just to kind of bump into you. You'd been into the Cenex LEVI session and were having lots of interesting conversations that day, weren't you?
Yes.
And as
yeah,
I said,
really useful.
as I said to you before we started recording, there were lots of CPOs, lots of charge point operators were absolutely chomping at the bit to get in there. And so was I, but there you go. So I just want to do a little bit of an introduction to what you both do. So Peter is the Environment Strategy Officer at Suffolk County Council. He's the lead for the Carbon Charter Network, and I want to read this out because this was on your LinkedIn profile, and a key instigator of plug-in Suffolk EV charging. And that is so true, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Katy is Project Manager, Environment Strategy for Suffolk County Council as well. Fantastic. I just want to start by getting... Peter, I'm going to pick on you first, don't you? I'm going to start with you first. So, it's not picking, I'm lovely. Can you explain a little bit about how long you've worked for the local authority, for Suffolk County Council, and you, as you said on your LinkedIn profile, you were the key instigator. Tell me about that journey, if you will.
Well, hi everyone, and a little bit of background. Prior to me working at the council, I was 26 years in the motor trade, the last 6 years of which I was an electric vehicle specialist for Renault UK. So since 2013, I've actually been using electric vehicles as my main drivers. And through that bitter experience, I learned that the things that EV drivers would both long for, would appreciate, and what they really dislike, because I was one myself, and I learned as the vehicles evolved. So so when we're talking about electric vehicle charging infrastructure, you look back at 2013 when the cars only slow charged and they had a range of between 60 and 80 miles. And I look at the things now and I think, oh, luxury, so there's a tremendous contrast there. But I moved in 2017, I moved to Suffolk County Council. And whilst I was dealing with the Carbon Charter as my main role, it was very much on my mind that there was a lot that could be done to, especially in a county like Suffolk, that it's very important that they focus on things like the visitor economy. There was a lot that could be done for public charging infrastructure. As the charging infrastructure across the UK evolved, it tended to go towards app-based access to small networks of charging infrastructure, and in the process of doing that, it excluded drivers in a way that filling up your car with petrol or diesel doesn't, because you can just rock up at any petrol or diesel station and fill up and pay using your contactless credit card. And so that was the kind of concept that we wanted to aim for across Suffolk. So we instigated a pilot project of what was called Plug-in Suffolk. And the idea of that was to roll out public infrastructure in the more rural areas where there was no charging infrastructure otherwise. And what infrastructure we did roll out had to be what we called open access. So there was two aspects to it. The actual hardware itself we had to develop in cooperation with a local company. And we developed bespoke hardware that went in at places like community centres or village halls in small rural communities, well away from the main arterial routes. And those could be accessed using an app or or a access card specific to that, but that was for local residents who hadn't got charging at home. So they could actually be on what's called a white list, where they paid slightly below the commercial rate for their electricity that they used to charge up their EVs. And then a tourist or someone from out of area that came in and just may be in this small rural village but fancied topping up or grazing some electricity while they're there, they could just plug in and pay using the contactless credit card. So it was completely easy. And the average transaction across Plug in Suffolk when it began was £4. So it always struck me that there was no need to be precious about the amount of money that you were allocating to this. There was no need to download an app. You just pay like you pay for everything else. So that was the concept behind Plug in Suffolk. And it obviously grew and got a lot of attention, and it's now received funding from central government. So it's going to roll on to a second phase.
It's fantastic. Can I just ask you before I go on to Katy as well? You know, you were talking about the hardware company that you were working with. So was this bespoke to you? Was it something that was actually created for Plug in Suffolk then?
Yes, it was. I spent a lot of time doing research before I kicked off the pilot scheme, and I went round a lot of the hardware manufacturers that were already rolling out destination charging across other areas, and it was basically a fact that they weren't keen on having open access. It had to be bespoke to them, so you had to download their app. Or you had to have, at the time when it started, it was you had to wait for a week while an access card came through the post to you, or a key fob that went on your keyring. It was that clumsy. And so, yes, we were very fortunate to have some companies in Suffolk we worked with to progress the concept, and we ended up with a very, very good piece of hardware that did the job for us.
So was it what size are we talking about for the hardware? Are we talking about kind of like a high level kind of charger with a couple of connectors, or one of the little ones where you take your cables?
Yes, so basically when you're talking about destination charging, you're most likely to be looking at standard rate. There's no point having an incredibly fast rate of charging if someone's going to be parked there
right.
for 3 or 4 hours anyway. And so these little village halls, these community centres, people tend to go there and stay there and dwell there for a little while. So they were the standard rate chargers, AC charging. The advantage of that was every single electric car on the market had the same connector. They had this 7-pin Type 2 connector, and even the ones that didn't had a little adapter, so everyone could use it. So that was a benefit from that point of view. Also, being standard rate charging, they weren't too demanding on the infrastructure that was already there. So we didn't have to fit new transformers, we didn't have to run in new power supplies. Most of these community centres or village halls had enough spare capacity to supply these chargers. So that worked out best all round for that aspect.
That's brilliant. That would have made a massive difference. So I'm going to go to you now, Katy. So you have kind of taken the lead on the Plug in Suffolk project anyway, haven't you? But just give me a bit of background about how you got involved. Where were you before? What you've kind of moved from into this?
Sure. So I've worked for Suffolk County Council since I think 2021.
Okay.
But I was more on the highways, operational highways and flooding side, working with the cabinet member for that. So then I joined the environment strategy team as a project manager in April this year. And so that was where I was assigned to the Plug in Suffolk project. So as Peter mentioned, we've now got central government funding. So the first rollout of Plug in Suffolk was successful. We got really good feedback, and we thought, so when we applied for the LEVI, they have the LEVI capital funding, which is the big pot of money that's coming soonish. They also did a pilot scheme before that where they asked for sort of, I think, 25 projects to sort of trials how the funding could be used. And Peter and the team applied for that funding with using the Plug in Suffolk model, which was approved. And so when I came into the team, I was then assigned to sort of take on the project using that funding and sort of move it forward so that Peter could carry on doing his excellent work with the carbon charter. But he's obviously been on board the whole way as an advisor / guru, so he's been an amazing help. But it's just so that there's sort of an extra level of support that can be dedicated to that wider rollout with the additional funding.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd heard about you, Peter, before we even
Good
no,
things, I hope.
because of Linda Grave. So I've
Right.
interviewed Linda on here before. So I heard your name not being taken in vain. It was it was very positive. So that was great to know. Can you just let me know? So how many in the first wave? How many chargers did you actually install?
Well, the target was, and it was very brave of Suffolk County Council because they actually put their own money behind this pilot scheme,
Oh gosh,
and
yeah.
it was a target of 100 sockets. So we've ended up with 32 sites across the county with 100 sockets across them, and the idea was if you actually looked at the map on like most people look on Zap Map, if you actually looked at Suffolk at the time when it started, there was big open areas where there was tumbleweeds blowing through. There was no charging infrastructure in those areas at all. So we started filling in those big, vast deserts of lack of charging, and so it was a tremendous success in that. Once the chargers were installed, it's then run as part of the community, as an asset for the community. So it's that all round benefits on all sides that was the aspect that appealed about the project.
So I was going to say, so how did you get the word out to the residents at the time? So was there a big EV community at the time when you first started? So it was 2018, wasn't it?
It was, moving into 2018 when we started
Yeah.
moving things along. It was quite interesting, actually. No, there wasn't a big EV community. When you actually looked at the EV uptake, Suffolk was slightly behind Cambridgeshire, Norfolk and Essex. That's now switched around where EV uptake has improved tremendously. And it was my belief that one of the last remaining obstacles, because I've learned that EVs are perfectly practical. They're better in every way, shape and form than petrol and diesel vehicles, to my mind, as passenger cars. I mean, they're quicker, quieter, smoother, cleaner, overall cheaper to run.
Yes.
So what's not to love about them? If you're fortunate enough to be able to get an electric vehicle, they're better. But the one obstacle that was still remaining was, I'd love to have an electric car, but where do I charge when I'm out and about? And there wasn't much across Suffolk. And because we're very dependent on tourism as well in the county, it was a complete no-brainer. We wanted to expand this infrastructure to attract attention to the fact that if you have an electric vehicle, Suffolk is a great place to visit.
And actually, it's good to know because I really like Suffolk. I said to you, we went there just before the pandemic for Christmas, and it's such a beautiful county. It really, really is. And we had a lovely time. And now it's good to know that there are charges in those rural areas. Because I was going to say, I mean, the effect of the fact that it was all so spread out, was that a challenge to start off with then?
Yes, definitely, because it was not just a case. You mentioned about how did you get the word out to the councils. We did actually we did brace ourselves thinking we're going to have to promote this, we're going to have to push this and sort of sell the concept to councils. As it turned out, the pilot scheme was heavily oversubscribed because when we got the first few in, then other councils, parishes noticed that that was a benefit to the local community, and they wanted them as well. So it was much easier to get the volunteer sites for us to roll those out than we were expecting.
Oh, that's good. And just tell me, both of you. So you've said you've had an EV since 2013.
2013, yeah.
2013. And you've now got an EV as well, haven't you, Katy?
Yes, it's a testament to Peter's levels of persuasion. I was only in the team for about 4 weeks, and my partner and I decided to go for it with the EV. We do really like ours. We've got a Corsa, electric Corsa, which is great. But yeah, a lot of our team now, the environment strategy team, are sort of making that switch over, and it's great to see that that's happening. I'm so sorry. Don't know why that's happening. I've closed it all.
Yes, I generally, Liz, get the blame for everyone getting an EV.
Yeah, Pete, Electric Pete, as he's known in the council.
Electric vehicles do sell
He is known.
themselves.
And actually, you just put you've just confirmed that it was Peter, because I was kind of like, yeah, Linda called you Electric Pete on this podcast when I was interviewing her.
Electric
So yeah, I love that. So go on. So what did you start off with then, Pete, and what have you got now?
Oh, well, working for Renault, it was Renault Zoe when it was first
Of
launched. I
course.
was there at the launch in
Of
the
course.
UK, and I spent
Yeah.
many a happy moment talking to members of the public and basically being told no one's going to buy those. They're just a rich person's toy. They'll never be practical. I think it's a case that very often people don't get the concept of improvement. So as time goes by, I actually remember somebody saying to me about how Jaguar is a proper car company and they'll never make an electric car. They won't be that silly. But of course, all the manufacturers are now. But there is an inevitability of improvement with a technology like this, as long as vested interests aren't able to block the advancements that come out. Or then it will eventually improve to the point that whatever you think of them at one particular moment, you have to extrapolate the rate of improvement, and eventually the argument in favour of electric vehicles will be completely overwhelming.
I mean, look at mobile phones. I always use this
Yes.
as an example. You know, I said, so I used to work with a guy when I lived in Halifax originally, and I worked with a guy. He was my regional manager. And he was based in Essex, and his mobile phone was like the size of a briefcase or a suitcase. It was just ridiculous. I'm ringing you from my car phone. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what they called them, weren't they? Were called your car phone. Sorry, Katy, you may be too young for that. But you know, if you think about that, and you think about the size that a mobile phone has kind of changed, and kind of like that. I'm not saying cars are going to get smaller. I just mean the technology has got so much better and so much. It's one of my husband's friends, he was kind of talking about iPhones. He's got, oh no, people are never going to be using them like the internet. In fact, yeah, my husband saw him last week. I should have got him to say something to him, but yeah, look at how we use things now. Look at the ability the ability that EVs actually have as well to kind of support the grid and things like that. Because there's a lot of things that people don't realise about electric vehicles, do they?
No, absolutely they don't. And I often liken it to the concept of buying a new petrol or diesel car. It's very much like buying one of those old mobile phones. It's the old, technically it's a new phone, but it's the old technology. You want the newer technology. And also the other one that someone mentioned to me was black and white televisions. You know, go out, you don't want to go out and buy the old technology. They're black and white TVs, the size of a cabinet in the corner of your room. And you want the latest flat screen LED TV, and that's the inevitability of improvement. It's the same with electric cars. You want the latest technology. You don't want to buy the old.
Exactly, and I do get that the prices do need to come down, don't they? I mean, we've been very lucky, and I don't know, Katy, whether you bought brand new or whether you've leased or whatever. But you know, I think we might have talked about this last time, mightn't we? But we bought a used EV, you know, within our budget, and actually it was slightly cheaper than what we paid for our petrol when we bought the last one that we had in 2019. So you know, it's doable, and I know that the prices will come down, because there's going to have to be no choice, is there really?
No.
I think that's a really important element of it, is that, and I would say this to a lot of people that talk to me about EVs, like at the moment, I'm not saying that every single person in the world, especially, or in the country, is in a position currently to have an electric vehicle. But if those of us who can and want to start doing it, we got a second hand on a finance agreement, and because that's how we would have had to get a petrol car if we'd done that anyway. And that works for us. We're in a very fortunate and privileged position. But the more that people who are in that position and that are able to, and when making a decision where they would have bought a new car or got a new car anyway, choose to go EV, that's going to saturate the second-hand market and reach a point where it is then more affordable for people on lower end of the income spectrum. Because totally understandably, at the moment, you can buy an old used petrol car for £800 that will get you where you need to go, and we're not there yet with EVs, but by people who can do it and are lucky enough to be able to do it, making that choice, making that switch, will hopefully start to saturate that market and make it a viable option for people on lower income. And that'll be brilliant, because then that'll really help with that move and that switch. And that's also where this kind of infrastructure really helps, because again, not having access to off-street parking, a lot of that goes hand in hand with different income levels, and that's where we need to make it so that it is a viable option for people. And that's part of how we do it is through infrastructure, through county council work, and part of how we do it is those of us who can do and help sort of bring that cycle into the second-hand market.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose my question then would be, at the moment, yes, there are kind of people like us who are, we're lucky enough to be able to do that. But how do we? There are other people who are probably lucky enough to be able to do that as well. But hear so much, and I always talk about this, that they hear so much negativity in the press. How do you two see us getting over that? How do we kind of get the message out? Because we talk about 1 million EVs on the road. I think it's about 1 million, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Surely 1 million of us aren't wrong. We're not wrong. Do you know what I mean? If you actually, yes, and I know there's is it 60 million in the UK? And I know it's like it's only a small proportion, but there's still 1 million of us. So if a million people all kind of come up with some positivity about this, then surely the negativity is going to have to start reducing.
I think it's just information. Oh, go on.
Sorry. I was just going to I may have some good news about the used vehicle market, because obviously coming from the motor trade, I keep quite a careful eye on that. And something a lot of people don't realise at the moment is there's a lot of fleets who have taken on electric vehicles in large numbers, but they run those vehicles for a 2 or 3 year cycle. There's a lot of fleets that are about to start swapping their vehicles over. So those electric vehicles are going to go to auction. They're going to come onto the used vehicle market. So at the moment, and I find it very interesting to keep an eye on the used vehicle market. At the moment, there isn't that much choice, and the prices tend to be higher. When the fleet market starts to supply the used vehicle market, then you find that has a tremendous effect and makes it much more accessible for more people. So that is potentially good news there. Sorry,
No,
Katy, please do.
that's great news. Go on, Katy. What were you going to say, my love?
No, just as to your question, I think it's just getting people information and getting them, I think it's the sort of things that we've been doing and that Pete's organised with regard to like experience days, electric vehicle experiences, getting people that chance to try the vehicle, try driving it, try charging it, showing them that the infrastructure is there so that, everyone can go, well, if I were to get an electric car, this is how I would charge it, and it wouldn't be an inconvenience, which is what we're working towards over the next 2 years. And yeah, it's just, you can only counter misinformation with correct information, and it's just getting that out to people in an accessible way and giving them a chance to experience it for themselves, I think, is the only way that we're going to change people's minds.
Yeah, you're right. And actually, I suppose the thing I see as a it's not a blocker as such. But in some ways it is. There's some really good dealerships out there, and obviously I know, Peter, you worked for Renault, but I had some experiences myself with dealerships when I was looking for an EV this time. I'm saying this time, this is the first one we've got, so looking for an EV with the dealership who were more interested in me buying a petrol or a diesel car, because actually the behaviour that they're following is their commission based work, isn't it? And actually, if you are a dealership salesman, I'm sorry, and if you're listening and you're in a dealership, and please don't take it the wrong way, but if in some dealerships, if that is your incentive, and there aren't many EVs coming through, and what's the best? If I'm kind of needing that money, would I rather push somebody towards a petrol or a diesel car, or an EV that's going to come in 6 months' time? Do you know what I mean? That's kind of, that would be my thinking about a blocking tactic, which I know people don't mean to, but it can cause problems.
Yes,
Tell me what you think.
The last people who want you to buy an electric car are the dealerships in some ways. To be fair, Liz, things were very, very different back in 2013 when I started. I didn't have to try too hard to be better than all of the other sales avenues of vehicles when it came to electric vehicles. So if someone was interested in an electric vehicle and they came to see me, I was a lot more enthusiastic, and the vehicle was much better to push, because that was what I believed in. That was what I felt was the future and the right thing to do. But even I found it was twice as much paperwork to complete a sale of an electric vehicle, and there were other aspects as well. Once you buy an electric vehicle, the dealership that you buy it from are never going to sell you a cam belt kit. They're never going to sell you oil filters. Then there's all these things that are no longer a revenue stream for them. So, as you quite rightly say, it's quite understandable. But in the defence of the motor trade in general, is a lot better now. There's a lot more passionate salespeople out there who are willing to help people looking at electric vehicles than it used to be, when they were quite severely opposed.
No, you're right. And actually, I did see I saw some really positive people, and I met some really kind of I don't know, just they weren't as good. But whether I'd gone in to buy a petrol or a diesel car instead of an EV, maybe the experience would have been the same. So I haven't got a frame of reference for that one,
But how did you find
it
it,
was.
Katie? How did you find the experience?
Yeah, a medium experience, I think I would say. I think it helped. We were going for second hand, which meant that there was no lead time. It was the car that we
That
were
was it.
looking at was sort of sitting there ready to
Yeah,
go pretty
same
much.
here.
So there was that extra sort of, well, if you want it, you can have it. But we also had, the knowledge that they have just isn't the same. I think there could be more training. So I was lucky. I work in electric vehicles. I probably understood the car on a level that the dealer
They didn't.
didn't.
Yeah.
So I imagine someone coming in who isn't sure about EVs wouldn't get enough reassurance necessarily if the person selling it to them knows all about petrol cars, is really confident at selling a petrol car, and then the electric vehicle, they're not able to answer the questions about what the battery size is and the charging time and the type of chargers. So I would be interested to see how somebody in the exact same situation as my partner and I, but without somebody who literally works with electric vehicle infrastructure, would find it. I think he was really helpful. He wanted to help. He wanted to sell us the car, but there was a definite knowledge gap there, which I think needs to be improved. And I think that would
Yeah.
massively help them feel more confident to sell the vehicles as well, because it may just be that they're like, well, actually, I know I can sell this petrol car because I know it inside and out, and I've been doing that for years. And whereas it'll be harder for me to sell them the electric one, and then they might not buy it. And as you say, totally understandable, especially if you're working on a commission-based system. People have got to have a livelihood as well.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I went to a second-hand EV specialist, and he was brilliant. I'd kind of got to the stage where, when you just think, oh, for goodness sake, I'm just fed up of being, fobbed off with, I'm a bit of a petrol head. This is what I got from quite a few of the dealerships. I'm a petrol head, blah, 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 blah. And actually, the used market of the ones that we were looking at wasn't quite there. So I went to this EV specialist, and yeah, I was really, really pleasantly surprised, because he was passionate about it, he was knowledgeable about it, and it, he wanted to sell us an EV, and it made such a difference. So I'd always say to people, if you don't get that kind of support from a dealership, just find somebody. There are dealerships out there that just sell EVs and used EVs, aren't there?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
then they probably would add a level of support to the whole process. I think that would definitely help people.
Go on,
And
Peter.
as
Sorry.
Katie mentioned, the Electric Vehicle Experience Day, which we're planning for next April, whereby we allow people to come and climb over the cars and have a good look at them and speak to the representatives who are very, very passionate about the electric vehicles. They're there for that very reason, and then they can take them for a very short try around the perimeter track. And it makes such a difference. Getting people to sit in the car and drive it, even briefly, really is the revelation for still a lot of people. There's a million people, as you quite rightly say, Liz. There's a million people out there already driving them and getting on absolutely fine, which answers most of the negativity that you often hear just from their experience. But there's still a lot of people out there who are in that area where they haven't experienced it yet. So we want to encourage that.
And my colleague Michelle said this as well. She gave analogy of going from horse and cart to a car. And and she says, "Can you imagine what it would have been like then?" And I went, "Yeah, but they didn't have social media then, did they?" So, and actually going from a horse and cart to a car, probably there would have been a level of the landowners probably having the vehicle, wouldn't they? And if you were kind of able to have one, you probably had no choice because you had to drive it for a landowner or whatever, that kind of thing. So yeah,
It's a good
I
analogy.
can. Yeah, I thought that was quite a good one to bring up. So how do you see Plug-in Suffolk growing in future then? What are obviously you've said about the LEVI funding, Katy. Where do you see Plug-in Suffolk heading over the next few years?
So I think it'll intersect with the LEVI not capability funding, the capital funding, two different types of funding. I think it'll intersect with that as well. I think just trying to get more charge points in the ground, more community groups, and seeing whether there's some scope to engage with, I think, other communities or other local councils I've spoken to have talked about the possibility of some sort of not full concession model, but there's all the back office and the maintenance, which can be quite a financial burden on small like village halls, and whether there's a way that we can work within that sphere of different types of concession model within our tender process, I think would be really helpful to see if there's a way that we can give autonomy still to these communities. They have operational control over the charge point, but that maybe the maintenance and the back office can be supported in a different way, and looking at ways that we can take the fantastic model that we've got where we're giving people in these small communities like a community owned asset that focuses on like making sure people locally have got a way to charge affordably, but understanding how it can fit into this wider, not looking at it in isolation. I think especially with this new funding we've got this wider rollout that we're trying to get a network across Suffolk of standard charging, standalone charge points, wall mounted, curbside, car parks, rapid, ultra rapid, and trying to blanket Suffolk with everything, all the different types of charging that you could possibly need, and trying to make sure Plug-in Suffolk comes along with that and sits within that sphere rather than sitting in isolation, because I think there's ways that they can all start to support each other.
Yeah, it's that right charger for the right place as well, isn't it?
Exactly that. Yeah,
that's so important, isn't it? Tell me what you think about something. So I stay over in Nuneaton every week at the moment. So I'm going to Nuneaton and Coventry, and there's a hotel that I stay at, and they've got 2 rapid 50 kilowatt chargers, but they've also got kind of a couple of 7 kilowatts. It's one charger, 2 connectors, and actually in some ways I kind of think, right, okay, wouldn't it be better for them to actually have some more, kind of 7 kilowatt chargers? Because I'm going to be sat, or even a lower, kind of something. I'm going to be. What's happening to me at the moment is I either have to decide to, because I always charge up to 80%. I've either got to hang around and then come back down after 30 minutes when I put it on a rapid charger, or I sit in the car, and then go into my room that I'm staying at, or I put it on a 7 kilowatt. Then I've got to come back in 3 hours time, and I obviously charging etiquette, make sure that I move then to another spot. What are your thoughts on places like that?
So we've actually got next to our offices a hotel that has blanketed their car park with like 10. Would you say 10, Peter? I haven't gone in and counted it. Loads of slow standard chargers. And I think that's a brilliant idea, because actually, like you say, people, if you've got more of them, you don't have to be so strict on the charging etiquette where you have to be like, right, you need to move it the minute it's finished. And you can have it where people are coming to stay for the night. So they drive up, they plug it in, and then in the morning they move it so that someone can use it, plug it in during the day while they go out for the day. And it can be a bit of a turnover. But like you say, the need for a fast charge or an ultra rapid or a rapid charger there is, I mean, it'll probably get used as long as people who are passing by can use it, especially if it's on an arterial route or it's quite a busy area. People who aren't necessarily staying at the hotel might be like, oh, I'll just pop in there. But I do think that's a perfect location for lots of sort of slower charging, because like exactly like you said, that's what it's about, understanding the use case for that area and
Yeah.
right, who's coming here, how long are they going to be here, what are the best type of charging for them.
And bizarrely enough, on the rapid charger, so the 50 kilowatt charger, has got EV signs on the floor, but the 7 kilowatt hasn't. So I've actually had people, when I've tried to park there, have actually been, they've iced it, they've had their petrol or diesel car in there, and then you're a bit stuffed, do you know what I mean? So you kind of got no choice but to go onto the rapid. But yeah, I really think, like you say, that use case is really, really important, making sure that, that you're providing it is just going back to what I said, the right charger for the right place is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, and if they're set up right, and ideally, then the rapid charger network that you have, taking Suffolk as an example, the way we're trying to set that up, and it is coming together really nicely, the rapid charger network works in support of the destination charging network and vice versa. So they're not like two in competition with one another.
Yeah.
They actually work together to provide the full range of charging requirements.
I like the fact that the way you're thinking, it's this. There's a multitude of chargers out there anyway, aren't there? Will you be going? Will you be going back to that? Because you're in. So phase 2, you've. Let me get my teeth in. Are you on? You're not underway with phase 2 yet, are you?
We're in the procurement process at the moment, so hopefully
Yes.
that's coming to a conclusion soon. I'm not running the procurement process, so I can't give you a complete up-to-date timeline, but we're getting a provider in place basically to do the next phase, which will be the first sort of 10 to 15 sites that we'll be installing. We've got we know who they'll be. We've got full applications, and we've worked with those communities, so we know where they're going, and so that's sort of where we're up to. As soon as we've got a CPO in place to actually do the installation, it should move quite quickly. We're hoping potentially get some in this year. Hopefully, if not very early next year, we'll be getting some actual charge points in the ground. And then we're sort of doing it in tranches. So this is sort of tranche 1. I think the aim is to do another 200 sockets with the money that we've got. So this will be, I think, what is it? As I say, we're doing 10 to 15 sites, 2 to 4 sockets at each site. So, I don't know, 20 to 50, depending on capacity and what we put in of that. But there's still quite a way to go for the next tranche. So we'll see how this installation goes, see how it works, and by the time these are all installed, we'll be going out to tender for our capital bid as well. So it's quite a good timeline to see how those two things are going to intersect, and then make decisions about the best way to roll out the rest of the Plug-in Suffolk funding.
Yeah, and we've talked before about the fact that other local authorities are coming to you guys because of what you've been doing, and I think Oxfordshire County Council and Oxfordshire City Council have had a similar thing. But just what are other local authorities experiencing? What are they, when they come to you, what are they asking you? And is it because they've not done it? I'm assuming it's because they're right on the beginning of their journey.
Yes, usually it's because I was going to let Peter go, but I'll go,
No,
and
I
then
knew
Peter
you
can
were.
go. I was like, oh. Yeah, usually it's because they're just getting started. A lot of counties that are contacting us have a similar setup to us, where they've got these rural and semi-rural market towns and villages, and so it's just a sort of they've seen the work that Peter's done has been so positively reported on. They've seen it's been used as an exemplar and on the government website, so they've seen that and gone, oh, maybe that will work for us, and they just want to have a chat with Peter about how he got the project started, and then have a chat with me about how, because they will probably be using the LEVI fund for anything that they're rolling out, how it now the project intersects with the LEVI funding, and it's just as a way of seeing whether what we're doing makes sense for them as well.
Yeah, okay. And do you know what? Just going back a couple of minutes, you kind of was talking about, because there's probably people who don't know what this is who are listening. You've got the LEVI capability and the LEVI capital. you talked about both of those, didn't you? What's
Yeah.
the difference between the two?
So there's actually three.
Oh God,
So
had
the
to be, didn't
first
there?
one was so it's all local electric vehicle infrastructure is the
Yes,
LEVI.
yeah,
There was the pilot fund, which was I think last year that was went out, which was them saying they knew they were about to do this big LEVI project, and they wanted to get 25 locations to do something that were sort of ready to go with something to see how the funding could be used as an example. So that is the money that we got for the plug-in Suffolk phase 2 rollout. And then the wider LEVI stuff is the capital fund, which is where that's been allocated to sort of pre-allocated to all local authorities, and then they said this is how much you can have, because they don't. What I think is nice about this process is they don't want it to be a competitive process. They want people to be talking to each other. So it's not like if you bid, if we get some money, then Herefordshire won't get any money, or so they've made it a really open process. They've pre-allocated the money of what you can have, but then they've said right now you actually need to do a proper application and tell us, how you want to spend it, what your project plan is. So that is the capital money that we'll be using to actually roll out the charge points. And then unusual for central government funding, as I understand it, they've also set up a capability fund, which is for resource, so people,
yes.
so that you can actually staff the project, so that people aren't trying to pull it from their business as usual. So that is sort of goes hand in hand with the capital and the capability. One is for the actual work and one is for the people delivering the work.
And I would also add to that, Liz, absolutely right what Katy said, but it was worthwhile going through the pain of setting up the pilot project originally and pushing against the currents that were then prevalent in the electric vehicle infrastructure industry, because we've gained that experience now. We've been through that torture of getting the pilot project established, and so we're very happy to pass that on to other local authorities and help them get off the starting line almost. And there's more. The good news is there's more and more people out there who have experience now. So that's it's really working.
So I'm gonna also ask you this question, and I did talk to you about this beforehand. So as I said to you, when we met at Cenex, there were a variety of people who would have absolutely loved to get into that LEVI room with you all, with all the local authorities. So my question to you is, charge point operators are absolutely chomping at the bit to get in with local authorities. What are your top tips for charge point operators to actually contact local authorities? Do they need to be doing something all whistles and bells? Do they need to be kind of out the front of the local authority offices, kind of having a little drum band? What do they need to be doing to get your attention? Maybe the drum band,
Drum band would be fun, but I don't think necessary.
So
we have had contact with quite a few CPOs. They just it depends. It depends by local authority. Everyone has different teams working on it, different ways of working on it. I mean, LinkedIn is quite a good way of finding out. We've had people contact us through there, finding out what people's roles are, or just contacting contact the local authority from a more generic email address. They usually have some sort of point of contact, and just say, can you please put me in touch with whoever's working on your electric vehicle infrastructure. The other advice I would have is get on as many frameworks as possible, procurement frameworks, because obviously everyone's using slightly different ones. There's the Oxford DPS, which and they did a talk about it at one of the LEVI events, where a few different frameworks came on and had a chat. So getting on as many of those, I know it can be quite an arduous process, but because of the heads of terms and there's quite strict procurement practices in place, I think a lot of councils are going to be using frameworks to do their procurement process, because so for example, the Oxford DPS have already, in order to sign up for the DPS, you have to the CPOs will have already gone through the checks to make sure they fit everything. So when we're going through our procurement process, we can just tailor it to what we want, and we know that they'll already be compliant with the LEVI rules and regulations, and there'll be other frameworks that do that. So that would be my other advice, is even if not necessarily to have a chat with us, but when people are putting out for work, when that time comes, it's going to be in that format. So if you're not on the framework, then you won't be able to bid for the work.
So is that a national framework or is that a local authority specific framework then?
I think, I wouldn't want to say. I think it's local authority. It's leave. I'm pretty sure it's Levi specific, but I wouldn't want you to quote me on that. It'll say everything on there. If on the opposite dynamic purchasing system it'll say it all on their website. But I think it's local authority specific because it's a local authority that's administering it.
Okay.
And Liz, I would just say where your this podcast could be gold to a potential CPO applying for this, because there's one very big thing that they need to consider when they approach a local authority. Approach it from the point of view of the end user. And this was why I struggled at the beginning when I was trying to get these organisations to think about it from the point of view of the actual electric vehicle owner who's pulled up at a charge point. What makes their life better? What improves their experience? If you approach it from that point of view, you're more likely to be successful in the longer term, and you're more likely to gain the agreement of the people that you're pitching your ideas to. Because all too often, and we were talking earlier about human nature being quite understandable, but all too often the pitch is purely from the point of view of the supplier, purely from the point of view of the installer, and the end user is sort of way back down the list of priorities, and that isn't the way it's supposed to be. It should be making the electric vehicle owner happier.
Particularly from the
Go on, sorry, Katy.
Particularly from the perspective of a local authority, because we're a public service. So our intention here is to provide some sort of benefit back to our communities, back to our residents. And I think sort of links in with what Pete was just saying is that you also want to look at, when you're looking at putting in charge points, specifically with the LEVI funding, we are looking at places that haven't got much of a commercial case, or that don't have off-street parking, probably lower income. So it's not just about pitching. We know all the places that are going to make loads of money, and we're happy to put a load of charge points in there. It needs to come to us with at least some ability to understand it as a portfolio, and understanding that, the LEVI fund is there to support, but also like being able to say we want to put in the majority of we want to put in all the commercially viable sites, but we're also prepared to put in X number of less viable to provide benefit back to the community, on the understanding that it's a portfolio. And that is the approach from a local authority perspective. We're not here as to financially gain from the process. It's about being a public service, and so the more that they can understand that when they're talking to local authorities, the easier that conversation is going to be.
I totally get you. In the work that I do, in kind of the improvement work that I do, we call it voice of the customer, and I brought it up every now and again on this podcast, because the end user is so important. If you think about the fact that everybody, I would hope that a lot of people who are working in it, like with you guys, are driving EVs. We're part of the EV crowd, as it were, and you yourself, will be using. I will be using. You will be using public charging at some point. You want to actually have that charge point operator to have been thinking about you when you plug in, or when you turn up to their machine. Turn up to the charger. It's working. It's easy to use. You don't have to do a few backflips whilst you're using your contactless card, or etc., or a drum band in the background. you don't. You want something simple. You want the charge point operator to recognise that they've thought about that, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
The other advice I would give working with a local authority is things take a little bit longer, just because there's a lot of levels of governance and things that you have to work through, approvals from different levels of the organisation, both private and political sides. So it's just accepting that things are going to take time. The sort of fast moving approach is not necessarily going to be well received. It's just the way that things work, because things have to be done properly and fairly, because again, we're using public money. So that's something that is really important for charge point operators to understand with any local authority, because it's just the way things work. It's not a personal thing. It's not that there's anything wrong. It's just things are going to take a little bit longer and need to be really airtight to make sure that we're doing everything by the book.
And do you think, because the LEVI funding, doesn't that actually finish at some point in the next couple of years? Am I right?
I don't think it'll be allocated. It needs to all be
Spent.
given to local authorities by the end of I think it's the end of not this financial year, but next financial year.
Right,
But there
okay.
isn't, I think they want it to be, the aim is for it all to be used as quickly as possible. But as far as I understand it, there isn't like if you haven't spent the money by 2 years after you've got it, then you'll have to give it back. But yeah, all the money should be allocated from central government to local government by the end of next financial year, so 2025.
And is that all local authorities then? Or is that
I
just
think so.
some? It is.
Anyone who's so they've done it in 2 tranches. So half the funding is, or roughly half, I think, is getting allocated this financial year. So we'll be with the local authorities that have been agreed to be in tranche 1 will receive their funding by the end of March, and then those that have agreed to be in tranche 2 will start receiving the money from April through to March 2025. So it'll all be released gradually, I think, in sort of phasing. So there'll be procurement, hopefully will be staggered in some way. I think that's part of why they've done it, is to sort of make it realistic, because if all local authorities received all their money in March next year, the procurement process would not be realistic. It wouldn't be sustainable. So they're trying to, I think, stagger the way the funds are released over the next 2 years.
And do you think there'll be more phases moving forward then? Because I tell you why I was going to, what I was thinking. I just thought, well, now we've had the pushback to 2035 of kind of, the manufacture of petrol and diesel cars. I just wondered whether, there's any word on the street, as it were, or in the local authorities, whether that funding is going to keep, whether they're going to keep allocating some more phases moving forward. Because
there's nothing that I've seen. I mean, I sort of like, how long is a piece of string at the moment? This is the funding that's being allocated. Nothing's been said yet about, I think it'll depend on how successful this is, what the rollout looks like, to see what the lay of the land is. But yeah, it will be a central government decision. So it will be up to OZEV how they want to allocate it, whether they want to allocate it, or whether they feel like this, because this funding should be leveraged as well. The aim isn't just that whatever they give the local authority, that's what they spend. It's supposed to be used in conjunction with CPOs wanting to fully fund some of it, put in some of their own. So at the moment, we don't know how much infrastructure is going to go in as a result of this. So I don't think anyone can predict the next phases or what's going to come after. I think we just need to see where we are in 2025.
Yeah.
I also think that the revolution is in progress. So whatever happens in the various outside influences that are going on all around us, and there's a storm outside at the moment, so it's quite an apt subject to be talking about. There will be turbulence on the road, but the people are switching over to electric vehicles. It's so inevitable now that my own prediction is that, as you mentioned earlier about price, there are new additions to the market coming in that are much more reasonably priced.
Yes.
And once that obstacle is removed, I have a strong feeling that from about 2025 onwards, nobody sensible is going to be looking at buying a new petrol or diesel car for their own use, because the arguments in favour of the electric vehicle are just too compelling.
Exactly. So you're looking at price parity, aren't you? But then all of the environmental, kind of options. I was having a conversation, I'll finish in a minute, but I was having a conversation with a really good friend of mine about, and she drives a diesel vehicle, and she's pro hydrogen. Now, whatever anybody thinks about hydrogen, it's it's kind of, there are those that think it's doable, so it's up to them. My main thinking was, and I specifically said this to her, that I just want people to be able to breathe properly without air pollution, and we have got far too many cars and vehicles on the road at the moment, haven't we? So that needs to be dealt with. But also the people who are kind of suffering, asthmatic, the kind of people who are dying from it. Sorry, I'm being morbid now, aren't I? But that's, when it comes down to it, that's what we need to do this for, as well as the climate, and if we don't do it, if we don't decarbonise, it's not just the planet, it's the people on the planet, because of various things, Anyway, I'm shutting up now.
No, it's a good point, well made, Liz, and I would just say that there are vested interests that are trying to resist the switch away from burning things, but inevitably they're going to be on the wrong side of history. And I do believe that the quicker we switch over, that people in the future are going to look back at these 2020s and they're going to say, what were they doing? What were they thinking of? Why didn't they just get switched over? The technology was there to start tackling climate change and address the problems. Why didn't they just get their fingers out and get on with it? And that's how we're going to be viewed. So I do believe it's inevitable that the situation is going to be improving, but yeah, there are going to be obstacles on the way.
Oh, Peter, honestly, that is another conversation, the vested interest conversation. You can come round my house and we can have that conversation, because that goes on a lot here, honestly. But it's not suitable for podcast ears. Listen, so if we have either charge point operators or other local authorities who are listening, or anybody who just wants to actually have a chat with you, I know you've said, Katy, haven't you, LinkedIn's a good place to find you. Where would you both like people to find you if they wanted to chat?
So I would say there's a Plugin Suffolk website is a good one to start with. I think it's pluginsuffolk.org, which has got my contact details, information about the scheme, and then Pete, how's best to get in touch with you?
Either the Carbon Charter, which is my main role, working on carboncharter.org, which is really useful for small and medium enterprises. Lots of information on there. But otherwise, I'll be working with Katy going forward. So we'll both help out any local authorities or anyone who needs our assistance.
Oh, you're an absolute star, both of you.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate all of your time. You've done some fantastic work and you are doing fantastic work. Keep doing it. Keep doing what you're doing, because everybody loves the fact that you're doing this. Everybody loves the fact that they can talk to you. You are very warm and genuine people. So I just want to say thank you ever so much for joining me anyway.
No, thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us.
So, and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else, and I shall say thank you for listening and watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. You've been watching Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon, and you'll receive all of our weekly videos. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Bye.